But getting close to Swami, I have had that kind of that he is everything, that he knows everything, that there is no limitation. I've learned not to talk very much to him because my particular relationship, when I talk, he generally makes my mind into marshmallow.
When Sam went off to India, it was frightening, shocking, but then I understood that he was compelled to do that because all the time that I'd known him, he was asking, is there a God? What is the meaning of it all? He would look at the sky and say, look at this mystery, this marvel, what is behind it?
He says that when you're with divinity, it's putting a limit on him to ask him for something because as if you know what you actually need. He says, what you ask is like a little drop in the ocean of what he can give you.
When it was thinking about Sai Baba 30 some years ago, because there was so much confusion and questioning on my face probably at that time. When Sam went off to India, it was frightening, shocking, but then I understood that he was compelled to do that because all the time that I'd known him, he was asking, is there a God?
Well, Swami is such a light. I mean, he shows us that there's a place beyond this world, an expanded, glorious level of spirituality. When you're there, the inner experience is silence, is expansion, is pure love. But Swami is telling us, look at, you're raising into a level now of bliss and peace that is beyond your body, beyond time, beyond death.
Welcome to Souljourns, the story of Sharon and Sam Sandweiss. California psychiatrist Dr. Sam Sandweiss is the author of one of the most popular books about the life of Sri Satya Sai Baba in the world, Sai Baba, the Holy Man and the Psychiatrist. This interview was recorded in San Diego, California, in April 2004.
I believe Swami's making me very happy today because I have Sharon and Sam Sandweiss with us, and we're going to have a chance to find out, I think, a lot that's going to be not just of interest, but enlightenment to all of us as well. Dr. Sandweiss, let's begin with you. There are so many people familiar with your story. You've documented it so well, and so many people have had the chance to read it and reread it for their benefit as well as for newcomers who have yet had that pleasure to read about the Holy Man and the Psychiatrist. In basic lines drawn as simply or as complexly as you choose to draw them, what brought you to Baba and how has he transformed your life?
Simple one like that. Well, I grew up in scientific tradition, and I thought that I was going to find some meaning and the meaning of life and the way to happiness through medicine and then through psychiatry. So I had that kind of yearning. Why are we here, and what's the meaning of the miracle? Because from the beginning, I was completely overwhelmed by the dazzle of the miracle. I mean, just to be here, I recognized it just wasn't a fluke and that it shouldn't be taken for granted, and I just wondered what the meaning was. So I thought in psychiatry we'd learn something about what brings peace and something about the meaning of life. And after being a psychiatrist for about 9 years, I remember really specifically driving down the road and thinking, you know, life would be completely different if I knew that I never would die. But that's just impossible to dream about, you know, that you don't really die, that you go on forever. And that, this is a great miracle way beyond what we sort of seem to think it is. And I would just sort of daydream like that, because that's a wonderful daydream. What if we never died? You know, how we would live life differently. And after being a psychiatrist for a while and seeing that psychiatry would not answer that question, and that I knew something about how to treat schizophrenia and depression and things of that nature, but the basic, really basic fundamental questions weren't answered. I began asking the question, have you ever seen a miracle? Mainly because I'd heard so many professors talk that I didn't trust words. You know, what is the theory of life, and can you tell me the meaning of life? I wanted to see somebody who actually could demonstrate that he knew. Could somebody be so beyond the body and the physical world that he was every place and beyond death, and could express it by showing us he had that there was some kind of correlate to this expanded consciousness in the form of a phenomena that exceeded physics, exceeded the understanding of chemistry and physics. Could I find somebody like that? Perhaps I wanted to live with a holy man and like the Zen master, you know, and just see what you could learn, because I knew you wouldn't learn it intellectually. You'd have to be with a person like that. So it wasn't long. I mean, I heard of great Zen people and Aikido masters, you know, martial arts people that could that had power, and you could feel it in their hands, or they could make your wrist hurt if they moved their hand over your wrist. I thought, well, gosh, who cares about that? You know, I mean, there are people that do care about that, but that wasn't what I was. But then I heard about Swami, and I mean, it was so obviously so far beyond anything that I'd heard. I mean, just to hear and to really grasp that he had this kind of extension and greatness that was reflected only in some of the greatest masters, Jesus and Buddha and Rama and Krishna. I mean, you just hear one miracle of his, or somebody who'd been in his presence who was transformed, and you knew this wasn't something of the physical world.
Before we go on, how was Swami first brought to your direct attention? Was it a book? Was it a conversation?
No, I was beginning to get interested in yoga. Mm-hmm. I was interested in first very classical psychiatry and psychoanalysis, and then I started to wonder about how yoga was related. I was into sort of fringe areas in psychiatry, like bioenergetics and like Gestalt. They're actually pretty well accepted, but they were not mainstream. And these Gestalt sort of investigates the whole idea that I may be really everything, and that when you're talking about something, it just may be a projection. So why don't you become that and talk back as if you're that projection, and take back some of yourself. I don't know if I'm getting too complicated here. But so that appealed to me, you know, that, hey, when we're talking, it just may be a projection of our mind. And those projections may have some power in them if we identified with them and took them on as an identity and began to talk like that and be like that. Maybe we would see the projected part of ourselves that was separate from ourselves.
Do many people in your profession have a habit of thinking this way, or are you pretty much of a standout in your class?
I don't think standout, but I don't think many middle-of-the-road psychiatrists think that way. You know, general practices, I've got a lot of people in the hospital, or a lot of outpatient people, and what's new in medications, and and how to use cognitive therapy or behavioral therapy to change distorted thought processes and things like that. That's how it generally. But the deeper questions about could there be something beyond the physical world? You know, could we be at a place where we never die, where we transcend everything? That's more of a spiritual kind of question, and I don't know. I think psychiatrists do have an interest, and there are a lot of closet spiritual aspirants in the field of psychiatry. And if you go to psychiatric meetings where there are spiritual subjects, the rooms are usually packed. I presented the American Psychiatric Association a number of times, and the rooms were packed. Because people are interested, but they don't reflect it in the practice. And I don't think many people, and that's just a thought, I mean, investigate it real seriously.
Well, you certainly had experience with that yourself, because then you became aware of Sai Baba, and you had a story to share, and probably fellow Sai Baba devotees were eager to share it with you, but I'm not sure the circle went beyond that. It's been my experience that family members, my siblings, my children, my neighbors, my coworkers really sort of tolerate with a wink and a nod my area of interest, but don't care to go too far beyond that.
Well, that's, you know, initially I was just actually, I thought it was one of his miracles. I mean, I couldn't believe that people wouldn't be interested. And I still can't believe it. I mean, even though I know it intellectually, and I know that I better watch what I say in front of people, it still strikes me as odd that thinking, feeling people wouldn't want to hear of some really substantial evidence of this greatness. Greatness of Swami, but he throws it right back. Greatness of our own selves.
You're
I mean,
the
that we
psychiatrist. How do you account for this?
why do I? Well, I think that many people are sort of dropping back from religion because organized religion hasn't given them answers, and I think one of the big things is we're in a dark age, and people are very much interested in the external world and sensation, and the false belief that happiness and meaning come from external objects. You know, that's very hard to break that. I haven't broken that the external world really is a little bit treacherous, maybe more than a little bit, that it can grab you and can hold you, and that the idea that you can get some kind of lasting happiness in external objects is not a correct belief. That's very, very critical. Most of us just maybe don't think about it, but don't believe it, even if we voice that. I mean, I've read where Swami has said not even 1 in a million of the great pundits that discourse on that really live it. Mm-hmm. That is, that it's simply not right, not true, that external objects bring you lasting happiness. And that's so if you're caught in believing external objects, then you're caught in a world of pleasure is the interval between two pains, and pain is the interval between two pleasures, and you get knocked around between those two. It's the area of duality, where you see separateness and things are not unity, they're separate. You want one object, you don't want another one. And we haven't looked deeply enough into it to know that if you move into that reality, most of us think that's the only real reality there is. If you do, you're going to get caught into life and death and birth and death and pleasure and pain. Then there are some people who genuinely are deep thinkers, and they realize that getting into the world of spirituality opens you up to superstition and an area that can't be verified by the intellect. And because there's been so much pain in the world due to that people believe in untested and concepts that cannot be tested, belief systems that cannot be, and that are really destructive. And in fact, most people, most religions have erred in that, and there have been lots of killings in the name of spirituality and religion. So I think real intelligent people that say, we've built a little niche here against this non-rational thought that can become that can hurt you, belief systems that can distort reality. We've built a little niche in terms of the scientific method and rational thought and reason that I just don't trust anything that tries to tell you there's something beyond this world that I can't measure.
You've learned to come to that place in time. You're a scientist with a foot very much in the field of scientific discovery, and you give every impression to me to be a spiritual seeker who's realized great awareness with that route as well. In that sector of your life, for one moment, before we get on to Sharon, because I want to ask her basically a similar question, and that is the awareness of Sai Baba in your life as a seeker, as a scientist and as a spiritual seeker. How has he made your life different primarily than it was before you became aware of it?
Well, that question could be answered in many different levels. On the physical level, you're sitting in a room which has been a Sai Baba center for over 30 years. So just on a physical level, we have put certain rhythms in our life which help us detach a little from the external world and allow ourselves to dwell in a realm that is a little beyond the senses. And there are certain kind of scheduled practices. Meditation and yoga in the early morning between 3 and 6. So since I met Swami,
early morning,
getting up early,
Jumps
like that.
back into bed.
But that practice, then, of course, starting the day, lighting a candle and singing to Swami, trying at the beginning, trying a little unsuccessfully to chant his name or to chant some mantra so that the mind doesn't get just sucked into the external world, but rests in a vibration that can lead you into more rarefied level. Being with a group of like-minded people and engaging in what Swami's program is, which is devotional singing, at least on a weekly basis, more with your family, education and trying to understand what the spiritual path is, and service. These are three very important. So we try to put that in our lives, and Swami was very good to me because as much as I kicked and shoved not to do it, he put a center in our house, and so I have to go every week. It used to be I have to go every week. Now it's, what a blessing it is to be here when people from all over the city, sometimes country, like you and Jody, and even the world will come here. And so we've met such a great, vast, large group of people because we've engaged in this service selflessly, not trying to be as selfless as you can, and trying to introspect what is still full of ego in this attempt. Service and devotion and education. We've tried to teach our children. We've had lots of discussion with our children. We try to keep our talk around sensible, important subjects about what is the meaning of all of this, how to do that in a balanced way with kids. So just from the physical, social, family level, there's a lot that happens. There's a lot of, and then internally, at first there's a big thing about the practice, but internally is what's most important, I think. That's an extraordinarily important, if there isn't a sense that there is meaning in the inner life, and you can see the movement in the inner life, then things are shallow. If you just do things rote, things are shallow. And there, one goes into an area that you can hardly talk about. I mean, Swami has said, first you're in the light, then the light is in you, and then you and the light are one. That's sort of a way of saying, first you're separate and you feel that you're in the light, you're in the light of a master, you're listening to his teachings and you're carrying the teachings out. Then you feel the master is in you, or the light is in you. Then what is that stirring that begins to open internally that you realize is beyond the physical world? And if you move into it, it brings you into an area of great meaning and great bliss and great silence and great sense of expansion. And you know that you're in another realm. What is that? And then to move more deeply into it and to see how that is related to your external patterns that you do with family, to see that the more you give up selfishness and attachment, the more the inner life opens and expands and is vibrant with life. That is hard to describe and express to people, but if that doesn't happen, you've got to be really questioning yourself, what am I doing, because that's the actual experience. And then the expansion gets to a level where you can intuit that one day even the observer that seems to be separate will merge into the observed, and there'll be a real experience, not just a psychological experience of oneness, but that one really merges with the other. I think I've heard somebody tell me, Swami once said that it's one thing if you feel the sadness of somebody who's telling you a sad story. It's another thing if you see somebody getting cut that you feel pain. But it's another altogether if that person gets cut and you bleed. That the closeness, the oneness is actually oneness. And, you wonder, are these inner experiences just psychological? Do they have nothing to do with real merging into a whole nother realm? Well, Swami is such a light. I mean, he shows us that there's a place beyond this world, an expanded, glorious level of spirituality. When you're there, the inner experience is silence, is expansion, is pure love. And it has correlates in the physical world. They're less important. Love is the most important. But Swami shows us, look at, you're really you're raising above body now. Let me show you. I'm not my body. Look at, I can raise that person from the dead. I mean, I can materialize for you what you're thinking. I'm showing you that if you move into this level, it's not a psychological level. You're moving into a level where there's real oneness. There is, and as yogis move into that level, they develop certain siddhi powers, which can be dangerous. But Swami is telling us, look at, you're raising into a level now of bliss and peace that is beyond your body, beyond time, beyond death.
Wonderful, wonderful answer to a basic question. Sharon's turn. Sharon,
Hi.
how did Baba come into your life in such a way that he's left this permanent smile on your face?
Well, it wasn't always there. when it was thinking about Sai Baba 30 some years ago, because there was so much confusion and questioning in my face, on my face probably at that time. When Sam went off to India, it was frightening, shocking, but then I understood that he was compelled to do that, because all the time that I'd known him, he was asking, is there a God? What is the meaning of it all? He would look at the sky and say, look at this mystery, this marvel, what is behind it? Even when we were dating and all the way through the early years of our marriage, what is the meaning? He was never satisfied just to accept the way things were, or what psychiatry told him, or what even our religion told us.
So he goes alone. You're home with 3 daughters?
Four.
4 daughters.
4 daughters.
And
Yeah.
you're not quite sure even who
Well,
Sai Baba is at this point.
No, we went to see, actually, he didn't explain that he had gone to see, he was searching and was interested perhaps in yoga and maybe expanded consciousness, and went to see Indra Devi down in Takati, and all she could talk about was Sai Baba. And she was showing us a video, the video broke. So we had to come back the next week, you know. Your interest is, your appetite is whetted then. Wow, what happened? Who is he? We came back the next week, and then Sam was stunned by the information that he saw in the video. I was confused by it, but I had this compelling desire to say, well, when is his birthday? I had to know, when is his birthday? November 23rd. My birthday. Oh, now I wondered what that means. Well, then shortly after that...
You remember wondering about his birthday before you knew it was the same as your own.
I just had to know, when is his birthday? I don't know why I had to ask Indra Devi. It was such urgency.
Maybe your first Leela about Sai Baba.
It was, well, it was his little gift to me, because he knew how difficult it was going to be for me when my husband went off to India.
Did that immediately begin to ease the difficulty when you started to put these little signs together?
No, I still had to struggle. But Sam was always restless and searching, so I thought, well, maybe, and I couldn't bear the way I was thinking about the world, because I said life is meaningless. I was afraid to ask, is there a God? Because what if there wasn't a God? There would be, and I felt it would be so dark, so fearful, so terrible, so meaningless, so bleak. And so I shoved that thought away from my conscious mind, although Sam was always asking it for us, both. And when he went off to India, fortunately, he wrote letters home. And that was a lifesaver, because he let me share that experience right from the beginning. And strangely enough, the mail came very quickly in those days, because I got a lot of letters pretty quickly. And so I could see how he was struggling first, who is this man, and all the miracles that were happening, and then experiencing Baba's love in a level that he had never experienced before, and then saying our lives are going to change. Oh my God, how are they going to change? And of course, I was very nervous and worried. Would he drop out when he came back? Was he going to drag us off to India? Would he stop earning a living? Was he going to become one of those fake little pretentious people who are so holy and they're they just don't do anything but pray and meditate? And we had 4 young daughters, so all those thoughts were in my head. And of course I had parents and his mother, and they were very traditional, and they were saying, what's happening with Sam? And the whole family, other extended family members,
so that was
were
a period
asking.
Of trial for you.
Yeah, it was very difficult. And then he came back, and he was changed. He became calmer. He was sweeter. He was nicer to
Are
my.
you saying that
He was
before his
nicer to my mother.
transformation, he wasn't calm and
No,
sweet?
sweeter, calmer, even sweeter. And he got rid of his motorcycle, which I never liked. He had a motorcycle dirt bike, and he got rid of his Porsche, which I didn't like because it got him into trouble.
A basic
so-
question that, just before you go on, you saw the transformation. It affected you, obviously, in a positive way. What about his mother and siblings and colleagues? It doesn't always affect people close to
No.
a Sai devotee in the same way.
His mother was very unusually open-minded and loving and accepting of anything that happened to us. My parents are a different story, but I still, it was partly because of my questioning, doubting. The first thing he did was say, "I'm eating your meals because you have meat. I'm not going to eat meat."
Not like that.
Okay, no, not like that. No, it wasn't quite like that. He said, "Darling, I think I want to eat more vegetables." More potatoes, please. Hold the meat.
Okay.
And so that was very insulting, and I was hurt. And then, within a month, I said, "Oh my God, I'm eating an animal." And that was the second greatest gift. The first was that I could share Sai Baba's birthday.
You were kind
The
of having
second,
a rapid transformation.
yeah, so many things were happening. I'm eating an animal, and that was it was like blinders came off my eyes. And then after that, I could not eat meat. And within 1 month, what a gift that was for the happiness of our marriage, that we didn't have that struggle. So with our daughters, I just told them, "Moms, I love animals. We're not going to eat meat, but you can eat it outside the home." And within maybe a year and a half, our twin daughters, who were about 8 and a half, said, "Mommy, we love animals so much. We're not going to eat them." And their younger sister said that. So it was sweet because it was the way we did it was the way I felt Sam was doing it with me, and the way Baba does it with devotees. He doesn't clunk you over the head. It's at your own pace and your own time, and you have to come to the awakening yourself. You can never I could never make my parents understand. My mother could not stand the pictures, the incense. She would write letters, "Oh, your home is so loving and peaceful," but then she'd come into the house, "Oh, the pictures, oh," because she thought we were worshiping. But then Sam was very smart because he dragged me off to India within a few
I
months.
was going to ask you about your first opportunity.
Within
to
a
cast
few
your eyes
months, he
on
dragged me
Baba's
off. I had fear of flying. We had 4 young daughters under 5. Our youngest was just 1.
They all went with you?
No. But my sister and Sam's brother were married. Our sisters and brothers are married. And he fortunately dragged me off to India. You have to see this for yourself, which was the best thing, really, because I had that experience.
So what was that first experience?
Baba was very kind, very loving. He saw us 3 times. He seemed familiar to me. When I first saw him, even we were driving in, I said, he looked I felt familiar with him already. But it was still confusing. And I was able to ask him my one question, which was always hounding me: what about death? Because I couldn't bear the thought that death was the end and that's all there is, and so it's so short, life is so short, and that we have to go and we have to say goodbye. And it really was bothering me a lot. And he was very sweet, and he said, "Oh, how can you fear death? It's merely shedding an article of clothing, and don't be afraid, and you're eternal. You live for your life is you live eternally. Don't be fearful." And it was such a sweet, simple answer, and it really gave me a little comfort.
Well, that's wonderful.
And then he went to Sam's brother and waved his hand and materialized a ring of, what was it, elephants? Elephants on the side, and with Baba.
A relief of Swami's face on the face of the ring,
Yeah.
and then 2 elephants on
Very-
each side in gold.
Very unusual, beautiful ring. Everyone gasped because it was the first time we had really seen this miraculous hand move, and I burst into tears. Not because I was so moved, because I was so jealous and upset and angry at Baba, because
You weren't in your spiritual mode.
No,
that second.
because Sam was the devotee, and he was lavishing attention on Donald, who couldn't care about Baba at all. And I was so hurt for Sam. How could he do that? He walked right over to me.
Baba did.
Yes, Baba. And he waved that again. His hand waved, and then it filled up with this very messy, greasy mound of a sugary candy, Indian candy. It just filled up like that. He said, "Sweets for your children." It was so sweet, and I felt that he really heard my heart. He understood my heart. So that was it. that was our trip. There was so much confusion when I came home, and we established the center, but I didn't understand the teachings about the unity. I felt, how is this challenging my own religion, Judaism? I felt challenged in many ways. I didn't want to I wasn't attracted to meditation. I didn't have time because 4 young daughters. We had this center. We opened up a center, and it brought a lot of joy to people and to Sam.
Where were you with your intuition at that time? Was there a conflict that seemed like it was going to be too big to bridge with the person you felt and were with in Prashanti Nilayam versus the person you are here as a mother raising 4 kids in San Diego?
Yes, I didn't understand how to integrate, because I didn't understand Baba and the teachings. I didn't know how to integrate it into my own personal life. And for years, actually, I felt this separation. This is my suburban life with children going to soccer and dance class and the PTA and the family gatherings. Oh, and then there's a spiritual life with the center and going to India and struggling with the spirit.
You obviously made that transition. How'd you do it?
I think I immersed myself in Baba's words. Eventually, I finally stopped resisting. There was a certain resistance that I think I was putting up, and then I had a very extraordinary trip. Many years, 14 years after meeting him, which I think up until then I wasn't sure that he liked me, that he loved me. I thought I was
Sai
Baba, that I was kind of coming in on Sam's coattails, that I wasn't me personally, that I wasn't a good devotee. I didn't like singing Sanskrit necessarily. I wanted to sing English, and some of the customs were so strange, and I didn't know how to integrate it into the life here. And finally, I began to see it was all one. I began to understand this idea of unity, that only practicing spirituality are we going to refine ourselves, transform ourselves. Only in action in the outer world, and he encourages that. He keeps on sending us out into the world. He doesn't say, go stick your head in the sand and pray. He says, pray, but go out and do good deeds and be involved in people. And then that's when all the rubbing and the refining process takes place, where we actually start shining and becoming good and loving.
Sharon, you're very good with words. A very simple question, especially for those who are less familiar with Baba than the longtime devotees who might have the opportunity to see this. Who is he?
Who is he? Oh, I wouldn't even presume to be able to explain, to say, describe who he is, except
I can see a transformation in your heart immediately when you heard the question.
He's love. He's
heart.
Pure love. I guess that's what I would say. That's my experience. But I didn't feel it at first. It took me a while for the resistance. He says that he projects back to us. He's a mirror projecting back ourselves. So perhaps I was seeing all my confusion, all my negativity, all my resistance, all dealing with all the society here, all the struggles here, all the pulls of family and everything else. And then he would project it back to me, and I didn't see this love coming from me directly until a few years into the experience, but I held on to him because the promise was so divine that he would give me the greatest gift, which was faith. I wanted to have faith. I didn't want to live a life without belief and faith. And
Tell me
finally,
about that faith. You're married to a psychiatrist, and he's got wonderful explanations, I'm sure, for how pain and doubt and stress comes into all of our lives. And yet, for many people, their faith seems to be able to sustain them through all this travail. Now with Baba in your life, how does that faith measure up to all the tests we're subjected to? For you personally.
how does a faith measure?
Your faith
How do
seems
I
to carry
utilize-
you through. Times can't be always good and blissful for you.
Okay,
There must
for
be
an
challenges in your
for an
life
example,
besides
we
that.
have a daughter who is, well, we have 4 daughters, and for years Baba has played with us about the marriage. He's going to, telling Sam, why aren't you looking for a good husband, and what's wrong with you, and you're lazy, you should be out there finding a good husband for them, and soon they're going to get married. Oh, they're going to say, there's a wonderful husband waiting over there, and he's a doctor, he's this. He played with us for so many years, these poor girls, and then we'd go back each year, and it's hard to find quality people in society now with values and goodness. It doesn't have to be a devotee, but it would be nice, but just a loving, good person who's in the world. So anyways, he would play with us, and finally, magically, our daughter got engaged to a very wonderful person. And would you know he's even a Jewish man, which was which was extraordinary, because our daughters, we are of course practice Judaism, but we feel very close to Baba and all the practice, the Hindu practice too. They grew up.
Your spiritual tradition.
Yes. So we're joy. We're on top of the world. Then she develops a health problem.
Mm-hmm.
We crash down because we say, well, why do we have this?
That's the sort of test.
Right. That's what I'm telling you, that here we're up in the world, up in the top, and then we're saying, oh, Baba, please. Well, how does the faith? I think there's a faith. It's a broader perspective that God, that whatever happens to us is good for us, and is helping us in some way, helping us grow, helping us learn, and that we just have that. You can fight it. You can be angry with God and say, why, God, are you doing this, punishing us? Why are you doing this to us? But then ultimately we have to accept it, because it's the mystery of life, and then we have to feel that it's going to help us, and usually it does. There's some growth that happens when we come through that difficulty, and He gives us His love to hang on to.
Oh, well put. Now some questions for both of you. So as a couple, where are you headed with this marriage you have to Sai Baba?
You can start.
Well, right now, when we were with Swami just maybe a month ago, he he has this hip problem. He broke his hip, and so he wasn't walking a lot. And I just sort of spontaneously said, Swami, can we help you? And he said, she should help you, and you should help her, and I'll help you both. As I don't need help, he said. Right. So,
but he did it, the way he said it was so sweetly, it was so much love. And he said, you take care of her, she takes care of you, and I take care of both and all. With so much sweetness and love and tenderness, and telling us, reminding us who He is.
Well, that's really, Sharon can do that better than I can, because the love just melts you. I mean, he'll say the words, but being in His presence just melts you. So he had given me some work to do, just in the immediate future. Where do we? How are we relating as a team and with Swami? He told me to write a book some years back, so I'm just about ready to finish it.
Is this your third?
It'll be the third book. And Sharon is such a support. I mean, if I'm having to try to balance my practice and writing a book, and we're in the finishing stages of putting in pictures and final editing, and there's a lot of attention that is needed. She's just the sweetest support.
Thank you, honey.
Because it's true. And the raising of the family. You see, we have a family to still raise. I guess there's no ever stopping that. And so the being loving support for the family, her supporting my interest in finishing this book in my practice. Sharon has been the hostess for the center for over 30 years. Most people don't know anything about that. That is putting out the carpets in the front, making the house clean, providing some sweets sometimes, making sure that the home is just a receptive, beautiful place, a temple. So we both want to take care of that and want to take care of and help the community here of Sai activities. On that level, we're very close together. If we are going to go out to speak, we take our walk down by the ocean and we discuss what's been happening with us, what just recently happened with us with Swami. We recollect all of the trips and the most significant parts of the trips. We talk about it. We light up because we're thinking of Swami, and then we're asked to go here and there. And for instance, you ask us to do this, and it's wonderful that you're doing this kind of work. And Venkataraman may ask us to do something at the ashram. I heard a nice interview where you were interviewed at the ashram by Venkataraman, and it was very, very nice. So there's plenty of service, and when a wife is that supportive to a husband, and I hope that I'm
And
as supportive
vice
to.
versa.
How?
Well, Baba says that the household where the husband and the wife and the children love and respect one another is the closest thing to heaven on earth. And that's pretty extraordinary if we can create that heavenly, loving atmosphere in a home and then extend it to the family, the Sai family, to our extended family, relative, blood family, and to all our friends. So he tells us, and then he says husband is half of wife, wife is half of husband, together they make one. And he says the marriage should be the sound of two hands making a sound, not one, that it has to be equal, it has to be. So he says so many things about the preciousness of the relationship of marriage.
He talks about the golden era that's coming or that's already here. Do you see it? And when are more Americans going to find this bandwagon coming through their neighborhood and want to jump on?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, when is it coming? Oh, we don't know. It's not in all we can do is radiate out our love that we have inside to those that we, have contact with. But I think despite all the violence and all the terrible things that are happening in the world, there's still an undercurrent, an interest in finding peace and love. There's a great growth of the Buddhism, I think, and what is that Jewish? Kabbalah. There's many people are studying Kabbalah, and because it's fashionable, some of them, but also there are a lot of truths about peace and love and selflessness in all of these different offshoots of different religions. So I think there's this searching that is going on among many people, even while we are still immersed in this violent world on the outside, outside and
Dr. Sam, what about you regarding what I expect is going to be a wildfire that just tears through this country with a hunger and a thirst to know the message of Baba and to know Baba? I keep thinking we're on the cusp of that happening. Surely you must feel that that's about to happen soon.
Well, first of all, the approach I would take to the question is that is there a golden age going on inside our own selves? And how close are we to the golden age inside our own self? It's very hard to tell what's going on in the external world. It's a strange place. There's always going to be troubles. In fact, Swami said,
troubles are your teacher.
And that's what the world is, one big trouble. It's a big trouble. So what's going to happen with that? That's hard to tell. Although Swami has said that the underpinnings for the golden age are there, that it takes a while. When a rotating fan is turned off, it takes a while before it stops. He said things like that, so we just have to believe. If you look at it, you think that we're in a terrible dark time. But then he said, it's during this Kali Yuga, or this dark time, that the inner life can move the quickest. That you're blessed to be born in a Kali Yuga, where you actually have the contact with an avatar. That if you follow a spiritual path, this is the most profitable time for you, the most advantageous time for you. So this is extraordinary time for all of us. What looks on the outside, don't get fooled, because it's just, when there's night, then the day looks brighter. You can tell what daylight is. And so when it's dark, you actually move very quickly to the light. So the inner life, the chance of the inner life brightening and becoming alive is extraordinary for us. We just have to recognize that there is a spiritual life and to turn our vision to it, because the chance of advancement in this lifetime is so great.
And
Let me ask you about the obstacles to that, though. Fear, doubts. Is faith enough to sustain people? You as a scientist, you as a psychiatrist, of all people on a path towards Baba, you must be able to relate to all of us who have fears and doubts at times. Can faith sustain people during traumatic times like that?
Well, you know, the power of faith and the power of love, how do you define that? We can't even define how chocolate tastes. I mean, but to such extraordinary inner experiences, when that comes alive, you see, we have a chance now. An avatar is with us, we turn our eyes to him. Of course we're going to have to go through all kinds of obstacles. That's actually part of the spiritual path. But the power of his love and the love that he opens up in us, the challenge to our faith, to deepen our faith so that it can approach almost any problem, the challenge to our balance, the challenge to our discrimination, all of these inner faculties are strengthened, and at this time, if we can just realize, how did Swami put this? You know, there are ages where there's such purity that everybody realizes there's a higher dimension and that God exists. Gods would play on the earth with, and at a time like that, Swami, I remember Swami was giving some kind of unusual reference here, that if you said a mantra for 10 years, it would have a certain effect. Then there have been 3 succeeding yugas, each one less bright with spirituality. And as spirituality, as the eye becomes blinded, more and more blinded, it would take less time with a mantra or with a spiritual practice before a person would have its benefit. Now we're in such a dark time where everything looks like it's such an obstacle and so impossible to overcome. What would take maybe 30 years of chanting, attempting to meditate for 30 years, it may take 10 seconds now, just 10 seconds, that if you can hold your focus, because the mind is so jumpy, is so fickle, is so interested in the negative, is so distracted, is so blinded, that if we have the power to realize that there may be something, take a look, just hold it for 10 seconds, the benefit can be so extraordinary. We're at a time now where the movement, inner life movement, can be very, very quick. And we just have to realize, overcome the doubts, at least try to put them to the side for a little bit, overcome, and realize that, yes, all the greats have talked about the same thing. There is such glory inside of us. There's such a treasure inside of us that, of course, you don't find treasure without some struggle, without some obstacle, but there's such a treasure that if we keep with it and we develop faith and discrimination and balance and truth and all of these wonderful spiritual qualities, we're going to hit it, and then the brightness of the gold will just explode.
For a couple of final questions. And Sharon, we're told not to proselytize. Yet how do you resist the urge to shout from the rooftop what you have learned after having come to Baba?
It's hard. Well, yes. Once I had an experience at the ashram when Baba taught me very strongly. We were waiting for darshan. We wait in lines, and the women are always talking. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to maintain silence. But this was many years ago. And an Indian woman was saying, "Oh, I'm staying in India, and my husband's at home with the children, but I want to stay longer." And my judgment mind was thinking, how could she do that to her husband and her family? Be here, and while her family is back home taking care of themselves, little children. And so I was being judgmental and talking to her and other people. And another woman was saying, "I want an interview. Tell me how I can get an interview." And I didn't really know. I don't know how you get an interview, but we were talking. I was giving suggestions. And then Baba was coming, and we had number 1. This was many years ago. And we ran in and plopped ourselves down in line. and he went by me and he didn't look. Well, that wasn't unusual. So then he came by my friend who was wanting this interview. She was leaving that day, and so he came by her and she jumped up and said, "Baba, I'm leaving. Interview, please, interview." And of course, I never advised her to do that. That was a terrible thing, to call attention and to be so disruptive, but that's what she did. And he looked at her, and then he looked over at me and he said, "Oh, you want interview? She'll give," pointing to me. But he did it playfully. "You want interview? She'll give." And you have to understand Baba, for those who have never experienced his playfulness, he can be so funny, so playful, but there's always a message, and that was a very strong one, that you don't give interviews, you don't go and, you know that it doesn't work, and people don't. In fact, Sam showed me that you don't do that, because he came back and didn't cram it down my throat, and yet he was immersed in it himself, and he changed, and I began to understand the only way we can influence people in our family and any friends is by our own actions and our love. And if we're loving and kind and giving to people, they'll ask, "Well, what makes you tick?" And in fact, that's what happened with our daughters. They had a Spanish teacher in the high school here, and the teacher had all the girls, and she would wonder, what is with these girls are such lovely, we have lovely daughters. They're so sweet and so kind and spirited, and I mean, they're sporty, they're everything, but they've learned the teachings, or they understand the love that we have in the household and what a treasure it is. And so the teacher said, "What is it?" And she found out about Sai Baba, and she started coming to the meetings. So I think that's the only thing that can change the world, and the only way, in fact, that it will have on others, by our own actions. With my own family, it's the same. My mother would see how much love, and she'd say, "How much love you have in the house," almost with envy, that there was that peacefulness. And as far as your original question about Baba, when is he going to be known? We've come to him, and I said, "Baba, where are the people?" This was a few years ago. "Why aren't there more people?" He said, "I want quality, not quantity. Quality." And we have wonderful quality. If the center can be so small, 30, 40 people, but the quality of the people, the heart of the people, and the way they do service, and the way they serve one another, and the earnestness and the kindness that they have, and the real sincere attempt to improve their lives and the lives of those around them, that's the quality, and that's the only thing that's going to make a difference in the world.
Well, the idea that there's something so great about being alive. There's something so great, and if we can see it in Swami, then we should know that it rests in us, and then he tells us how to find that. And in this latest book that I wrote, I wanted to express it in the title, so I was going to title this book "Man is God." I gave the mock-up of the cover to Swami, and he just wrote something on it quickly. It wasn't until a year later I took it out and took a look at it. I saw what he did. He had written the word "with love" into "Man is God." With love, Baba. And I said, "With love, man is God." I said, "Gosh, that's the title of the book, So I brought it back to Swami. I said, "Swami, some people think it's a little bit presumptuous, man is God. Is it good to say, with love, man is God? Is that a good title?" He said, "Yes, that's what I've been telling you." You see, it's hard. I mean, even though he tells us over and over again that man actually is divinity, that's hard to believe. I mean, man is actually divinity beyond any separation, beyond any weakness, beyond any fear, beyond grief, beyond death. He's divinity itself. And Swami is not just saying that lightly, he's giving us a path. And the path, there's beautiful, I mean, his teachings are just filled with pearls, telling us about the nature of the mind and how it can be a limitation, how it has strength, but how it can be a limitation, how the mind has to be corralled a little bit by sense control and control of desire. Not by just killing yourself and turning everything off, but you have to have a little bit of balance. And then how you have to turn the mind into divinity and develop some kind of relationship. It doesn't have to be with Swami, but the relationship with divinity, when you follow it, it opens up the love. That love is enough to capture the mind. And then to bring that out into the community and to try to do nice things in service and to help each other in community. And in that, we build love, and also we get closer to God. We develop our character. But one of the most important things is we rub up against each other, and it's a time for detaching from ego and from all of the dross that's inside ourselves. Being with each other in community helps us become aware of our shortcomings so we can release it. And it's in the release, it's becoming open and released without anything, that we find everything. This statement of Swami, everything is nothing and nothing is everything, is very, very powerful. This nothing is the divinity within ourselves.
As we conclude this, do you both anticipate seeing Swami again in the form? And what more would you like him to do in your lives?
Oh, I want to, I hope, I pray that we can be with him again. It's hard to even describe the joy and the bliss of being in his presence.
Is it necessary for people to be in his presence?
Well, I'm astounded at how many people don't have that experience and still experience it, because you can be in his presence in your dream, you can be in his presence in your mind, in your heart, in your life experience. He can be there and pop into your life at any second, so you have to watch for him all the time. But I would say that people should hold on to him for dear life, and look for him everywhere. And I pray that I can see him all the time, everywhere, and everyone. That would be joyful for me.
And Sam, what about you? If you had, let's just play a game for a second. One final opportunity to be in his form in this lifetime. What sort of questions might you ask him?
Well, I've learned not to ask him a question. I've learned not to talk very much to him, because my particular relationship, when I talk, he generally makes my mind into marshmallow. You know, that is, he helps me understand how little the mind can really grasp. And he says that when you're with divinity, it's putting a limit on him to ask him for something, because as if you know what you actually need. He says, what you ask is like a little drop in the ocean of what he can give you. He knows what he can give you, so you have to be very careful. I remember that one of the old devotees who recently passed on at the ashram, Subrao, had a father who Swami said was the foremost Vedic pundit in the country. And his father told him, one, when you're with Swami, you don't have to do anything. That you don't have to talk, you don't have to think. Swami puts the thought in your mind, he puts the word in your mouth. You should realize that you don't have to do anything with him. He governs everything. There's nothing lost when you're with him that you forgot to ask him a question. It's like with God also. Just turn your mind to him. You don't have to ask him anything. He knows everything. You just have to be close to him. So you don't have to do anything. Just be with him. Secondly, with Swami, this old Vedic pundit said, every aspect of divinity rests in Swami. Everything that we've ever known or will know or know now about divinity rests in Swami. I don't know how a Vedic pundit would know that. But getting close to Swami, I have had that kind of that he is everything, that he knows everything, that there is no limitation. And third, the man has told his son that whatever your mind tells you, remember Swami is God. Whatever the mind tells you, remember Swami is God. This man, Subrao, who is an intelligent, educated man, and deeply deep in spirituality, he heard his father say that, and he said, is that all? And his father says, what? Is that all? He was in his deathbed at that time. He rose up and he says, no, listen. Whatever your mind tells you, never forget Swami is God. Because the mind doubts, and it's filled with all kinds of chaos and darkness. So here's Subrao. He listened to his father. He's sitting in a discourse. Swami is giving a discourse in the Purna Chandra. And all of a sudden Swami says, and then this old pundit told his son, whatever your mind tells you, never forget that Swami is God. So Subrao listens like that. And he said, and the son said, is that all? And the man rose up and said, no, listen, whatever your mind tells you, never forget Swami is God. And he started pounding on the podium, just like his father pounded. Subrao looked up there and he just chilled. We have to remember that. The mind has a lot of power and greatness, but it has infinite ability to confuse and confound and add darkness and confusion to our lives. And that there is a light. Look at the light for a little while, because that light, everything is in it, and you don't have to do anything. Bask yourself in it. Listen to what he tells you to do and do that, but you don't have to ask him anything. He'll give you everything.
Sharon and Sam Sandweiss, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Sai Baba.
Pleasure.
Respecting and abiding by